Ladies and gentlemen, Carlos Maestas, hopefully I said it correctly, is a chief storysmith. Carlos has founded his cinematic storytelling firm, Key Ideas, 16 years ago. It was through personal pain and spiritual growth that he discovered a passion for storytelling, especially for organizations having a significant social impact. His work has been featured on the BBC, The Rivard Report, Upworthy, and has garnered multiple industry awards, including 3 Lone Star Emmy nominations. Carlos also moonlights occasionally as a stand-up comedian and once opened for Saturday Night Live alumnus Dennis Miller. Ladies and gentlemen, Carlos Maestas!
Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. I know it's a late night. I know many of you may have kids, and those kids probably wouldn't appreciate you getting drunk in their theater. But unlike Alexei, I say we should fight the power, even if that power is 3 years old. So I'm going to be talking about storytelling, something I'm very passionate about, comedy, and loss. So you guys ready to get started? All right. There's nothing more important than our story. Our story is what makes us unique. Our story is what connects us. Our story has the power to bring purpose to our pain. Our story is why we're all here today. Throughout history, leaders have used storytelling to turn messages into movements. But it's not just for leaders. We tell our story when we apply for a job. We tell our story when we're meeting a mate. Chris Rock says, when you're going on a date for the first time, when you're meeting that person, you're not meeting them, you're meeting their representative. You don't get the real story for about 3 months. I think comedians are brilliant at simplifying very complex issues. When I was 26, I had 2 roommates who were comics, and I always wanted to do stand-up. So one night, I stayed up really late, I wrote a bunch of material, I gave it to my roommate, Miguel. He looked at it, and he was like, yeah, this is crap. And I got my first lesson. I was schooled on how to write for stand-up comedy. He said, what you need to do is you need to write about yourself, because nobody has exactly your story. And when you deliver it, you're going to deliver it with a different authenticity because there's truth to it. And it made a lot of sense. So it's important to be authentic when you tell your story. This is a set of nonprofit logos. It's hard to tell them apart. It's like some graphic designer went rogue at Vistaprint and is like, I'm going to make a killing selling all these logos, right? But can you see how this is a problem? Because all of these organizations are competing for the same dollars. See, storytelling should be original. It should also be emotional. You can make people laugh, you can make people cry, you can inspire people. John Cotter said Martin Luther King Jr. didn't reduce anger among blacks and contentment among whites by announcing on Washington Mall, I have a strategic plan. Great storytelling can also bring purpose to people's pain. See, when my friend Miguel told me I needed to write about myself, what was true about my story at that time is I was actually going through a really painful divorce. How was I going to make that funny, right? Well, here we go. I recently went through a divorce. I wanted to work things out, but her boyfriend wasn't willing to compromise. And I don't think people realize how easy it is to get divorced nowadays. I predict eventually you'll be able to go through a drive-thru and get a divorce. I'll take a number 8 with a Sprite. Okay, sir, that's a Big Mac with cheese, a Sprite, and a divorce. Everything on that? No, hold the child support. Just leave that out. And I'm a single dad. Any single dad will tell you that if your kid doesn't get what they want, automatically they start crying for their mom, right? So my son was crying for his mom, and I said, okay, I'm just going to talk to him. So I said, son, I know you miss your mommy, but mommy doesn't live here anymore. He's like, why, daddy? I was like, well, mommy and daddy stood up in front of a room full of all our friends and family, and mommy vowed before God to be with daddy till death do us part. But see, daddy's still alive, honey. And that's right, mommy lied to God. And now she's going to hell. Boop. No. So I instantly got known as the Mommy Lied to God comic. And that one thing that differentiated me also connected me to my audience. So I started doing stand-up because it was just cheaper than therapy, okay? And the other thing that happened is this church that I was going to asked me to start producing services for them. And the first service they asked me to produce was on breakup divorce. It was on Valentine's Day. But here's what was interesting, is at that time, they didn't really know my story. But they let me go up, do stand-up, and share my story. They wouldn't let me change the service name to Mommy Lied to God, but that's okay. But I went up, I talked about getting closer to my Creator, forgiving my ex-wife, and learning to forgive myself. And a couple weird things happened. Randomly, the week before the service, my ex-wife said, "Hey, I'm thinking about going to your church." And I was like, "Okay, you can come, but it's gonna get a little awkward for you because I'm gonna be talking about you." But she came. She came, she was shaking, she cried, but she also laughed. The other thing that happened is I would meet somebody who was at that service who said, I was sitting there with my son and my mom in the cry room, and I got a perspective on my divorce that I hadn't had before. Well, we started dating, and this is us at our wedding with our 2 boys. And this is the one we made later, right? So why do I share this story? It's not because if you're going through a divorce, I suggest you do stand-up comedy, okay? Performing at a hole-in-the-wall bar at Laredo in front of 5 drunk people is not uplifting, okay? Especially if you're one of them. I share this because sharing my story completely changed my life. I think sharing your story is a gift, and this was a gift that my friend Miguel gave me. Because what happened is about 6 months after he moved into my house, he was running in the park, and he had a massive heart attack, and he passed away at 32 years old. And see, he knew I wanted to do stand-up comedy, and I felt like he left this gift behind for me. See, I was performing at a benefit at the River Center Comedy Club for Miguel, and a booker who booked local shows thought I was funny, and he booked me for the first show. And I didn't even have an act. I feel like Miguel knew I wanted to do comedy, and he gave me a gift that would change my life. This is the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's said to be one of the best interpretations of Gothic architecture since the Middle Ages. The architect Gaudi takes his inspiration from nature, and so you see these columns, they kind of branch out like a tree trunk does, and the color that comes through the stained glass windows is a color I've never seen before. It's just a marvel, right? But here's the coolest thing. The coolest thing is that it's not done yet. It started in 1882, and it won't be complete until the year 2026. So that means that there's a group of people that decided they were going to start this project knowing they would never live to see it finished, including Gaudi himself, who died in 1926. They knew the project wouldn't be complete in their lifetime. So here's the final point. Let's consider sharing stories that we can connect with that will never live to see complete, because work that will serve humanity for generations to come is a story worth telling. Thanks, guys. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
You're very dapper.
Oh, thank you. You are too.
Thank you.
Both married.
Your husband's there.
My husband's
So
there, and you're
husband-
married to
I got a little hot all of a sudden. Sorry.
Myra Carey.
Mariah Carey?
Mariah Carey, thank you. I'm not, I don't listen to pop music. So you're...
I know who Mariah Carey is.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So you're a storyteller, you're a storysmith, and you have a business
I do.
that you started, and I recently was driving down the street and drove past your business.
Oh, cool.
And thought, what the hell is that? Could you tell us a bit more?
Sure. So we specialize in sharing creative content, doing storytelling, mainly for nonprofits, but we do it for companies too. As I sort of showed, I think nonprofits are doing incredible work, but they're not always great at sharing their story. And they have to compete with everybody else. They have to differentiate themselves like everybody else. But what's great about the work that they do is there's plenty of stories to tell.
What brought you to this discovery to create this business?
A lot of it was the journey of connecting with that church. I took 2 mission trips to Africa. Actually 4. I took 4 mission trips to Africa. My wife went with me on the last 2. And I realized that there are so many great stories that needed to be told, and there were so many stories in our city that needed to be told. And so it's kind of, I fell in love with telling that kind of story.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, and I think we're probably all going to end up being grateful if we aren't already grateful for the work that you're doing. Because I think there are the big stories in the world, there are the great impacts, but I think what's important is to tell the story of who we are as San Antonians and what makes us great and what makes us special.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.